Hello, everybody. I'm Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am brought to you in part by WBFR Block 50 Radio, which is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan, iTunes, iHeart, wherever you're listening. I am there. Plenty to get to today. Obviously, more free agency in the NFL, which, look, everybody, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's other things going on, too. There's obviously conference tournament play going on right now in NCAA basketball. We're getting ready for Selection Sunday coming up this weekend. Obviously, there's the Nate Diaz Masvidal fight that just got made. How about Louisville basketball? They fired their head coach. I've got some reasons why I think they've been unsuccessful over the recent years. Plenty to get to today. Look, I think one thing that we need to keep in mind with all of the free agency signings and all this stuff, and I've said this 1,000,001 times over the course of my career, is we need to step back and remember that while there's some really big names out there and they're making some really big moves, it's really all going to be about whether or not they have a coach that will be able to use them. And I think for me, the best example right now is the Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry. In fact, I don't think that there's a better example out there right now than Baltimore and Derrick Henry. Look, I said the same thing years ago. Remember when Antonio Brown went to the Raiders? I'm open. Derrick hit me. I'm open. Remember that? Antonio Brown all over social media? I'm sure you remember that. How did that work out? Then he went to New England. That didn't work out. Then he goes to Tampa Bay. Eventually, that didn't work out. Well, that's a personnel thing. That's an Antonio Brown thing. That's not a coaching thing, which is my next point. Sometimes it just doesn't mesh well. Guys don't get along with other guys in the locker room. They don't fit in for whatever reason. The locker room is still the most important place in football, and I've said that I don't know how many times. Did you see Cam Newton on Shaq's podcast? Man, I miss the locker room, hanging out with the guys, the connections that you make, kicking it with the fellas afterwards, making a new friend. Hey, man, what are you doing later on? You want to hang out? It's the most important place. So whether or not Derrick Henry is going to mesh well, that's an entirely different thing. Whether or not they're going to know how to use him is also going to be an entirely different thing. Look, let's not forget that Derrick Henry's style is not necessarily the option style that the Baltimore Ravens run. Baltimore's got a very power offense. They run out of a lot of power sets, but it's still very finesse-like. Still very finesse. You run a lot of option. Derrick Henry is a north and south guy. Now, look, I'm not saying that he doesn't have the speed to get around. I've had this argument with people I don't know how many times on the internet. Derrick Henry's a lot faster than people think he is. But what I'm saying is really you want to get him going north and south to begin with. Then eventually you want to let him get out on his own. But you really don't design a whole lot of counter plays for Derrick Henry. So how's it going to work out? I mean, Baltimore, right? No more Gus Edwards. Didn't he sign with Washington? Zay Flowers at wide receiver. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Right? He basically, all the investigations, that's a whole mess. I've already talked about it on this show. The point of what I'm saying is it's on pause right now. But we don't know what's going to happen with that. They trade away Moses, right? They let him go. They let him go to the Jets. You've got John Sampson as an offensive lineman. He's a free agent. You've got Kevin Zeitler as an offensive lineman. He's a free agent. J.K. Dobbins, your other running back, he's gone. Dalvin Cook, but, I mean, he's out the door. But, he didn't sign until, wasn't it the playoffs? Which is another perfect example. All season long, the Baltimore Ravens were a run football team, and they were amazing. They go to play against the most important game of the year, play in the most important game of the year, against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're averaging 6 yards a tote, and what do they decide to do? Hey, you know what, man? We're just going to drop back 82% of the time against one of the best pass defenses in all the NFL. We're just going to play huck it, chuck it football, knowing that their pass rush is going to be great, knowing that guys are going to have a hard time getting open, knowing that Zay Flowers is a rookie, knowing that Andrews had just come back. And to be honest with you, they're better without Andrews. If I'm being real, they're better without him. Lamar Jackson, that's like his safety net, man. So wherever he's looking around, whatever's going to happen, he's looking for Andrews. It's so much better without him, which is a move that I think Baltimore should consider. Again, the point of what I'm saying is, though, how's it going to work out? Now, I understand that Harbaugh, if there's anybody that can be run first and foremost, that could be him. And Lamar Jackson's not going to have a problem with going under center. And you can still do things with Derrick Henry out of the pistol. He's not that bad as a receiver. He's an okay blocker. What I'm saying is you're going to be thin at running back, so you're going to have to completely rely on Derrick Henry. And the moves that they made at offensive line right now, look, you can say they want to get younger, whatever the case is. I prefer experience, if I'm being honest with you. So I think that the Baltimore Ravens have made the big splash. I mean, after all, they only gave Derrick Henry $16 million guaranteed over the 2 years. And what has he got, like another $4 or $5 million that he can make in bonuses? So for whatever reason, the market didn't favor Derrick Henry, which is surprising to me. I really think he could have got a lot more money. But maybe he wants to go to a winner. That could also be the thing. But now you're getting rid of your offensive line. This is going to me, this whole thing is going to boil down to coaching and locker room. And that's pretty much with just about anybody, to be honest with you. Can they use the piece that they just acquired? Because understand that acquiring a piece is not always a coaching decision. Look, it is a GM's job to go out and find the best possible football player. But finding the best possible football player does not necessarily mean you found the right piece to the puzzle for your organization. So there's a lot to consider here. While I think it could fit, that doesn't mean that it will. And look, the AFC Central, top to bottom, I mean, weren't they the first division in NFL history last year? Everybody finished with a winning record. And you got to think, with Cincinnati, they did that without Joe Burrow for the most part. And even then, when he was playing, he was still playing hurt. So you've got Deshaun Watson, you've got Lamar Jackson, you've got Russell Wilson, you've got Joe Burrow. Now you have Najee Harris at running back. You've got Derrick Henry at running back. Look, man, there were some moves that were made. Don't get me wrong. But this division's still going to be competitive. It's going to be really competitive. Nick Chubb, if he's healthy, you got him in Cleveland, one of the most overlooked running backs in all the NFL. We could be seeing the physical overall return to that division. Pittsburgh, that defense that they've got, but I mean, again, there's just so many different ins and outs to it. But I think for me, the main point is going to be whether or not they actually allow Lamar and Derrick Henry to be themselves. But to be themselves, Derrick Henry's going to have to learn some new things with offense. When he was in Tennessee, it was still very much under the center. When he was at Alabama, it was almost exclusively under the center. So ground and pound football, something that I think they could do. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to have a problem with it. And if they're able to get the option play together, I mean, come on. You're sitting there. Your job as a defensive end is to figure out who the hell's going to keep. You zone in on either one of them. Look, to me, you're going to have to run spies on both of them, especially if they start getting that thing down. You're going to have to run spies on both of them. It's something you could do to get real creative, something that I've seen before in football that can work sometimes, man. Both guys carrying the football in that option. Man, I'm telling you what, you get something like that down, Pat. The speed of Lamar, the power of Derrick Henry. But again, though, I think they need to go a different direction with Andrews at tight end. I just felt like they were just so much better this year for the most part without him. I really do. And who knows what's going to happen with Zay Flowers. I mean, obviously, they're probably going to go with an offensive lineman in the draft. Defensively, they're not really that bad. I'm not going to say that they're set, but they're not that bad. They've made a couple of other moves on the defensive side of the football, but regardless, I think for me, that's probably the biggest one. Look, there's been a lot of them, right? Russ and all these guys. I get that. But I think the biggest one is Derrick Henry to Baltimore. And I think Baltimore really showed everybody, look, we're not goofing around. We're not new goofing at all, Brody. We're here. We're going to put our fingers in the mud, and we're going to go to work. And I ain't mad at him. In the meantime, Louisville basketball, they fire Kenny Payne. Look, I don't want to say that they didn't fire Kenny Payne without probable cause because, let's be honest, the record itself suggests everything that we need to know. But if I'm being perfectly honest with you about what's going on right now with Louisville basketball, I still think that they are just reeling right now from the federal investigation from the FBI, the NCAA, so really investigations that happened a few years ago. Now, look, Rick Pitino can say it's been 5 years and he's moved on and all that good stuff, all he wants to. But the fact of the matter is, it is still lingering in Louisville. Let's not forget that Katina Powell, who was a madam, had allegations that she was asked to provide strippers and escorts to potential recruits for the basketball team. As a matter of fact, as a result of that investigation in the tell-all book that she wrote, where she claimed all of this stuff, they had to vacate 123 wins, and including the national championship from 2013. Then Pitino gets fired in 2017, but that was from a separate issue that happened because there were allegations of bribery and pay for play with Adidas. And the player that was at the forefront of all that was Brian Bowen, who the NCAA claimed took $100,000 from Adidas, from a rep from Adidas, I should say. Now, you're going to go, well, man, it's been so long. They just recently got punished for a lot of this stuff, man. And you got to understand that KU and some of these other guys, because of this federal investigation of bribery and all this stuff, because remember, KU got busted for allegedly leaving duffel bags full of, $50,000, $75,000, $150,000 of cash, all kinds of other stuff they were supposedly doing with the basketball team. This was a federal investigation. Federal. Now, the punishment for Louisville may have been light. But I want to be clear about something. Since they have fired Rick Pitino and all this stuff is still looming, that team is 82-99. Now, I know that a few years ago in 2020, they had that 24-7 year, and we don't know how that would have ended because March Madness, right? Didn't even get started. So we don't know what would have happened. What we do know is this. They've been horrendous overall since. They only got hit with like a couple of amount of recruits that you can talk to. They got hit with like a $10,000 fine or something. I mean, it was, you want to talk about the slap of the wrist or the slap of the wrist. That was exactly what Louisville got. Now, Rick Pitino denied all this stuff. He said if players, coaches, anybody would have known any of this stuff was going on, we would have stopped all this on a dime. Well, whether he knew or not, I don't know if it matters or not. If he didn't know anything, it's obviously unfortunate about his firing, but he is the head coach. And the NCAA is going to tell you, well, look, you're the head coach. You've got to have control over everything that's going on with the team. And if you don't know what's going on with your team, then you're obviously not as involved as we would like you to be because technically you are an educator. Because in order to coach at the collegiate level, you have to be an educator and you have to teach classes. So being an educator and not keeping an eye on your guys, the NCAA looks at that and goes, And the universities will too. Somebody's going to have to take the fall, and the universities are always going to jump out in front of this and go, we just can't. I mean, I think you probably could have hung on while you were waiting for all that stuff to come out with the, alleged Madam incident and all that. I mean, when did that book come out? Was it like 2015? And Rick Pitino doesn't get fired till 2017, but it was just more piling on. It was piling on. And now the athletic director's coming out saying, well, we've got to get serious. We got to get, serious about who we hire. And bro, who's going to want to take that job right now? Do you understand what's lingering, what's going on with this university? Do you understand that there are people who are going to Google any allegations whatsoever on Louisville? And whoever mom, dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever the guardians, they are going to look at this and they're going to go, man, I don't know if I want my kid to be affiliated with this. It's going to be hard. You know, I credit Coach Mack for trying to take on something like that after the fact. He was pretty much in a no-win situation. And that's, you know, just the reality of it. But there was just too much there. And Louisville has never recovered from any of that. And it's amazing to me because, again, look, especially if you compare it to something like the death penalty, right? Remember SMU? I'm sure everybody's seen the documentary by now, the 30 for 30, the Pony Express. You start looking at all that. By and large, Miami, SMU, all these, Oklahoma, Alabama, all these places have been hit with way more than Louisville really ever did. But then again, you can say, because what is it, 2012 to 2015, there are asterisks by Louisville's record. So you've got 3 years of wins and a national championship that you cannot even claim right now. And they hung that banner anyways. But technically, they're not allowed to claim it. Which, by the way, side quest here, this is why I go with official national champions. Because technically, any university out there can claim that they were the national champions. I hate to break that to people, but you can actually claim it. Okay? So they hung that banner up, but it didn't mean anything. So you literally have a useless banner that was hanging there, and people are walking in and they're going, wasn't that thing taken away though, bro? It's just not a good look. It's really not. And I understand that you don't want to take away from what those kids accomplished, and it's a catch-22 because you still can't say that there was a better team that year. But then again, if all these alleged recruiting violations didn't happen, and if all this alleged stuff with Adidas and, the strippers and all that didn't happen, you have to go with it did happen because that's what the allegations suggest, the finding of guilt, unfortunately, or, whatever way you want to look at it, the finding of guilt, then you have to say, well, maybe they wouldn't have been able to recruit those players. So I think when I look at the situation overall and I look at where Louisville is, I think anybody that takes on that coaching job right now is going to be in a no-win situation. I don't think it matters if it's Kenny Payne, if it's somebody from the NBA, if it's Billy Donovan even. Look at what Billy Donovan did with Florida. I don't even know that he would be able to step into this situation and make it right. I think whoever you hire as a head basketball coach is going to have to give him some leeway, not just time-wise. I'm talking about, bro, that banner doesn't count. We're taking it down. We're going to win a legitimate one. Get rid of it. Hey, we need to figure out a way to start erasing some of this lingering stuff that people are still reading and seeing about us and that is still coming out. We need to figure out a way to straighten out this program. We need to get some kids in here that are legit. They want to, they want the education. We're going to give them some NIL money. We're not going to make promises we can't keep. We're not going to do any of this BS anymore, and we're going to go for the gusto. You've got to understand that you're going to have somebody that's got some balls, bro. Somebody with some balls to walk into that place and go, we're changing everything. You're going to give me at least 5 years to get this done. I don't care if next season we only win one game. You're going to have to stick this out because I've got a mess to clean up. The other two guys couldn't do it. You're going to have to be patient. That's all there is to it. And they're going to have to want somebody who sees the future, not just right now. If Louisville wakes up today and decides we can go and get a guy who's going to help us win right now, you are out of your ever-living mind. It's not going to happen. You got to do something else. You have to shake it up. You have to be patient. I know patience is not a word that we like to use in the instant gratification society that we live in. I know the Jake Pauls of the world are all out here getting every little thing that they want, but I'm going to tell everybody something right now. Real hard work sometimes is needed. And if you're going to correct something of this magnitude, like what's been going on at Louisville, again, since this all went down and they fired Pitino, they are 82-99. They're horrible. They're not good. And if you don't give a coach 4 or 5 years, what are you going to do? Now, the Philadelphia Eagles, to me, they did the craziest thing out of anybody during this time. If this ends up being legit, and as of the moment of this broadcast, it is, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Let's not forget what C.J. Gardner-Johnson said about Philadelphia Eagles fans. He literally called them, and I quote, obnoxious. Not just obnoxious, not just noxious, not just a little annoying, not passionate and misunderstood. No. He real life said they are fucking obnoxious. That's a real quote. That's C.J. Gardner-Johnson, people. And I think, and you know what? I got to tell you, if you're a Philly fan, if I'm keeping it a buck, Brody, I probably respect the hell out of that. Because at least he's being honest. He's not running around kissing everybody's ass, telling, oh, man, Philly's just the most passionate fan base in the world and people don't get them. They're misunderstood. He kept it real. Nah, Brody, they're annoying. I don't really like them. I wonder what that plane ride's going to be like when he flies into Philly. Oh, my goodness. But you know what, though? It's not like that's just not C.J. Gardner. Does anybody remember the whole thing in New Orleans when Javen Wim belted him right across the face? That whole thing started basically 2 quarters ago. Right? Remember, because him and Javen, they were messing with each other. They were jawing with each other. And this is when CJ was in New Orleans, right? And they were playing against Chicago. And Wim, they were just sitting there talking. And CJ just grabs Brody's mouthpiece. It ends up on the ground. One of his own linemen from the Chicago Bears takes the mouthpiece and just flings it out, just like the hell with this, because Wim never bothered to put the damn thing back in. So he's not in for a while. So basically what you have to understand is that Wim went to the sideline seething, waiting a little more, patiently, just sitting there, chilling, minding his business. Him and his mischievous thoughts. He's finally in the game. He doesn't even really try on the play. And he just strolls up on Buddy, taps him on the shoulder. When CJ turns around, he yanks out his mouthpiece and then whaps him right across the face. Now, I don't know what CJ said after that, but he just stood there, and then Brody whaps him again. And then a fight breaks out. And even his own players are like, bro, get the hell out of here. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, just move out the way. We're not here for this. Brody never let it go. So whatever him and C.J. Gardner were talking about, he took that to heart. And the mouthpiece thing was real life disrespect to him. I mean, Brody acted like it was a Keith Talib when he took old boy's chain. Seriously. And then let's not forget that C.J. Gardner also beefed with Baker Mayfield. Remember that when C.J. Gardner was like, man, you look at Gage and Godwin and all these guys, and then Baker's just like, are you really even paying attention to us? Because Gage hasn't played all year long, bro. And then, of course, C.J. Gardner, he gets the interception off the tip, and then he's jawing with Baker again after the game and all that stuff. And, man, it's just – this is who C.J. Gardner is. And if you ask me, his attitude is perfect for teams like Philly. If he was with Antonio Pierce in Oakland, no wonder it worked out so well for him in Detroit, you know, with Dan Campbell. This is who he is. You know, and by the way, look, I'll be the first to tell you that I get what you're talking about with him running his mouth and acting like he did something when it was a tip pass and all that, or drop pass. He gets a lot of his interceptions like that. Go back and look when he was Philly. He's just right place, right time. He's got a nose for the ball, man. And, you can call it luck if you want to, but luck is when hard work meets opportunity, right? So let's just be honest here and admit that C.J. Gardner is really good at what he does. You may not love his yapping, and that's okay. Me personally, for the most part, I don't really have a problem with it. I think Brody is funny. I really do. I mean, if you look at, all of, the whole thing. But I will say this. After the thing happened in New Orleans, he did get on there and say, man, I'm innocent. But you could tell he's, kind of snickering. He just, he knew he wasn't. He knew he wasn't innocent at all. He's just, snickering and letting it fly and all this. It was just kind of like, bro, I'm innocent in all this. Stop the cap, amigo. You know what you did, Brody. You need to stop that cap. Trying to avoid that NFL fine. That's what that is. I'm trying to avoid that NFL fine at all costs. Psh. Look, I think the Eagles did pretty good for themselves. You could say they lost Swift, but they also get Saquon, okay, who's going to have something to prove. And Giants, you better be ready because I think Tiki Barber really pissed him off. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson on defense is going to be a big thing. They still got to get some offensive linemen, but let's not forget that Eagles defense really hasn't been that good. The year that they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and they lost that game to the Chiefs, the defense was only ranked 28th in the NFL in points per game. And they were giving up 28 points per game, which is awful. They were horrible. They were letting everybody score. Okay, so I really just think that they had to do something. Now, offensively, they're still going to need linemen. I'll tell you that much right now. Wide out, obviously, they're set. Tight end, I think they're good to go still. And then, of course, did you see Jason Kelsey? He's like, of course I retire. And then you guys go and get Saquon Barkley. Like, okay, bro, I see how it is. It is what it is. But, he's already got his ring, though. I mean, come on. Depending on, whether they could do salary cap-wise or whatever he wants to make, I'm pretty sure they would be willing to open up a slot for him. I mean, my goodness. But I think at the end of the day, he'll be happy, retired, no big deal. But the point is to me, the Eagles definitely made the craziest signing in all of free agency. I really do, man. You want to talk about going for the gusto? He don't like our fans. Bring him in. Bring it back. So we'll see how that goes. Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, they're going to be boxing on June the 1st for the rematch, which I don't know why they're calling it the BMF rematch because it's not for the BMF belt. I want to be clear about that. Okay, this is a boxing match. Dana is not making this fight in the UFC, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think he wants to make the fight. I don't think he feels a need to make this fight. Look, he's already shut down the notion that he's going to make a trilogy between Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. That's not the fight to make. He doesn't even know if he's going to make the fight right now with Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. So that's up in the air. So I think that for right now, regardless of whether or not Dana White has said that Diaz is always going to have a home there or not, that can mean any number of things. What we need to understand is that Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, maybe even Michael Chandler, just need to put them out of our heads for a little while, right? Because there are other things going on, number one, with the UFC. You've got 300 coming up. You had Sean O'Malley just defend a title fight. You've got the boxing match that's going to be happening with, and it's not in the UFC, but still with combat sports in general. You've got Mike Tyson and Jake Paul and that travesty that we're all going to watch. Mike Tyson said, I'm not excited for the last fight that I was in, but I'm excited for this one, though. I mean, we'll see, bro. We'll see how much you enjoy really training, cutting weight, doing all that stuff again. Look, I want to be clear. I don't know that there's enough interest in this fight to really make it. I don't. Look, Nate Diaz already tried boxing, and he got embarrassed by a YouTuber. a YouTuber. Now, I don't know who this favors. It could favor Masvidal just because, given his background, whatever you want to say, all right, fine. But I don't know that this is a big enough draw. I don't know that these two guys combined are a big enough draw, especially in June when you're probably going to have the NBA playoffs still going on. At the bare minimum, probably the NBA finals. It's not going to be long after that you're going to be having this Tyson fight. It's not going to be long after that you're going to be having the NBA draft. I mean, you're going to be in the middle of the summer, so you might get lucky and be able to take advantage of that. But the pay-per-view vibes for this thing, I'm not really – I don't see it. I don't see it working. They're not big enough draws. This is a fairly – I don't want to say it's a short notice thing, but, I mean, come on. Anybody who trains, anybody who fights, they know. This is the middle of March now. Okay, so you got April, May, and then June the 1st is here. So how are either one of these guys going to look? Are we going to see goofy, like, non-takedowns? And Jorge Masvidal, you know, look, I've already said before that I think the Usman fight really stuck with people. Now, to be fair, Masvidal took that fight on short notice. But being beat by basically foot stomps was not a good look for him whatsoever. And the way that I look at this thing, when I get honest about it, and I look at Masvidal's career, I mean, he's calling out guys like Chael Sonnen, saying he'd like to punch him in the orbitals and all kinds of stuff. And it's just kind of like, it's almost like Jorge has turned into that fighter that is a little bitter, hates the fact that he's had to retire. And we all know that Nate Diaz is like, to me, he's Conor McGregor's biggest fan. Everything that McGregor has done, he has tried to do. McGregor announces he's going to retire. Nate Diaz making fun of him, I'm going to retire. Conor McGregor, I'm going to box. Nate Diaz, I'm going to box. Conor McGregor, I'm coming back to the UFC. I want to be able to fight him. I know you want that money, Brody, but I think we need to get honest about Nate Diaz's career. He's a legend, but what would categorize him, for instance, as a Hall of Famer? What would categorize him as that? He lost the second fight to McGregor, whether he wants to admit to it or not. Okay? One guy looked like they'd been in a fight. Another guy looked like he got mauled by a tiger. Okay? So, and that guy was Nate Diaz. You could say that McGregor ran and all that stuff all you want to, and Diaz is flipping him off and all that, and they had a hell of a fight for the most part. But let's keep it a buck. McGregor had a game plan, and it worked. He had more time to train. You know, he did a different weight class, and he beat him. He didn't allow Nate Diaz to get him on the ground. He made him stand and bang with him, and it worked in favor of McGregor. You know, I could say that, you know, the gloves are probably going to make a difference. I mean, this is something that we've talked about a lot, especially recently on the program, because there's a lot of discussion right now that's out there in combat sports. There are people that are saying, you know, like bare knuckle brawl and all that stuff, it's nothing more than a glorified bar fight, which is something that they initially said about MMA, right? Now people respect MMA, but we're looking at the gloves, the ounces. You know, normally it's 8, 10, 12-ounce gloves when you're boxing. In MMA, it's usually 4 to 8 ounce gloves. And in bare knuckle, literally your bare knuckle. You can have wrap on there or whatever, but it can't be, you know, too much. And so somebody's power is going to take over. If I had to go power, I would go Jorge Masvidal with this. But that would be pretty much where the buck stops. There are a lot of interesting fights that are out there with King Ryan to an extent, him and Devin Haney and all that. There's a lot going on with combat sports right now, and I can appreciate people trying to stay with boxing, but why does everybody want to be a boxer still? I mean, it's almost like boxing is turning into what a lot of people thought MMA was. Well, I can't make it in boxing, so I'm going to go fight MMA. Well, now it's probably, look, I can't make it in MMA, so I'm going to go and try and box. I got to do something. I got to keep money coming in somehow, some way. I mean, this is why a lot of fighters will tell you that a fighter's life is depressing, because once you're done and the money is gone, there's nothing left. There's nothing. Your whole identity was in being a fighter. And it is a brutal, brutal life. The training, the constant blows to the head, all the interviews. A lot of these guys still work regular jobs outside of fighting. You know, it's grueling. I can't tell you how many combat sports athletes I've interviewed that they'll clear a nice little check, you know, $30,000, $40,000 or whatever for a fight, $80,000 for a fight. But it's right back to the warehouse, man. It's right back to their security job. They're working, 50 hours a week at their security job. They're trying to fit in training 25 hours, 30 hours a week. They're traveling back and forth. I mean, I know guys that drive an hour and 45 minutes to go and train after they've already done their regular job. And then they go and they train. And then they've got to drive an hour and a half back home to go do the wife thing. It's not an easy life. And a lot of them don't have a hell of a lot of money. And I've known some guys that literally fight for food, and I'm not even kidding you. I mean, that's why Mike Tyson said it's sad to have a fighter's life, and yet here he is fighting again. I don't know what's going on with boxing right now. It's not in a good place. This is not a good look. This is not a good fight to make. It's not worse than the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight, but we're getting to that level. We're getting to that level where it's kind of like, okay, everybody is fighting now just to fight almost. Because what does this fight mean? It doesn't advance either Jorge Masvidal or Nate Diaz in their careers. Maybe it keeps them in shape. Whatever the case may be, keeps them ready to an extent, to get back in the cage if either one of them feels a need to do so, if somebody else will sign them to get into the cage. But I don't know that it's a good move for the promotion. I don't know if it's a good move for anybody. It doesn't do anything. You're just literally collecting a check, and I don't know that anybody's going to be interested. I just, for my money, the way that I look at it is it's a non-interesting fight. There's no draw there. You're trying to put together two names that used to mean something, but they no longer mean anything. They'll always be relevant in the MMA world. But in boxing, it'll just be this one time Nate Diaz had a fight with Jorge Masvidal. In 4 years from now, somebody will post something online and go, that one time that Masvidal fought Diaz in a boxing ring. And everybody will go, oh yeah, Nate Diaz was that same guy who got embarrassed in boxing by a YouTuber. That's all I'm saying. I'm doing everything I can to try and break this up, by the way. I mean, that's why I brought in, the Louisville thing, the Masvidal thing. And I keep seeing different variations of this, but this is directly from the horse's mouth himself, Nick Saban, on today's college athlete, and here it is.
All the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always about helping people be more successful in life. My wife even said to me, we'd have all the recruits over on Sunday with their parents for breakfast, and she would always meet with the mothers and talk about how she was going to help and impact their sons and how they would be well taken care of. And she came to me, like right before I retired and said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? She said, all they care about is how much you're going to pay them. They don't care about how you're going to develop them, which is all what we've always done. So why are we doing this?
Well, there it is. Nick Saban's wife on what college athletics is all about now. Look, Nick Saban is the GOAT. Okay, Alabama fan, I want to get that out of the way. I know you all feel like we're probably judging Nick Saban after the fact. It's not that we're not saying that he's not a great football coach. But this is something I've said before, and I'm going to say it again. Pretty simple here. The game has passed Nick Saban by, and it happens. There comes a time when the new generation that comes into play is completely different from the generation and maybe even generation and a half that was before them. The work ethic is different. The demands are different. The wants, requests, the needs, all of that stuff becomes different. Okay? And Nick Saban, to me, right now, is the epitome of the hypocritical college football coach who is being outed for who he really is in terms of what he wants the game to look like. Now, I will say this, that Nick Saban has never said that it's wrong for the players to get paid, but he does feel like it's a free-for-all. But here's the thing, and I've said this a million times. You got to understand something. If you look up an indentured servant, it is essentially what most college athletes were. Hey, we're going to teach you how to read and write a little bit. It doesn't really mean anything to us, but we're going to pretend that it does. We're going to give you a place to stay. We're going to give you a voucher for food on Sundays. We're going to feed you just enough Monday through Saturday. We're going to make you do 12 credit hours. We're going to make you have X amount of grades. If you get out of line and we don't like it, we are going to punish you. We are going to make it really hard because we're to get to the NFL because we're going to make you look like you are a bad person who doesn't really care about the game of football with allegations that we will run into the ground and punish you for. If we punish you and you decide you're going to go to the NFL is going to throw us a bone and they're going to suspend you. Don't believe me? Go ask Terrell Pryor. You have no way out of this situation. We have 100% control of you. And even though you are 18 and you are lawfully able to sign a contract, we are going to make you sign a contract, irony, that says you're not allowed to sign contracts and make your own money. We are going to make you sign a contract that says you're not able to get a job and make extra income. We are going to make you sign a contract that says you are going to bend to our will, and whatever we choose to do with you is whatever we choose to do with you. And by the way, the universities have complete control over your scholarships along with us. So if you get hurt, you get out of line, it gets pulled, period. And by the way, not everybody gets a scholarship. Universities, in case anybody's forgot, has been allotted 75 scholarships per year. Guys, you can have up to 75 players on a D1 football team alone. You think all 75 of those available scholarships for athletics are going to go exquisitely or exclusively on the football team? Come on. Half of these guys are either on partials or none. There are parents out there right now that are paying their kids tuition to play at a D1 school for athletics. So what if they're asking about the money? They've always asked about the money. I mean, come on, man. His own players alleged that Nick Saban, with the car dealership that he owns, was letting those guys take the cars out and joyride and stuff in them and giving them cars to borrow for a while and all that kind of stuff. Nick Saban himself. Okay, so let's just cut the BS. Okay? Let's cut through the crap cake. And let's just admit that college football's always been like this. SMU with the death penalty. A little bit ago, I just talked about Louisville basketball with this. I just talked about KU basketball with this. Allegations of strippers and prostitution. Allegations of duffel bags of 75, 150 grand. Allegations of cars being given out. All kinds of stuff. What do you mean this isn't the college football you know? It's always been there. It was just under wraps because it wasn't legal for it to happen. Of course they're going to ask about the money. There are people right now that are in impoverished situations that are seeing a way out, that are seeing a way for their kids finally able to get their due. And for all these people saying, well, you haven't earned anything yet. You haven't worked for anything. Look, if you were good enough when you were in high school to get recruited at a place like Alabama that has won championship after championship with Nick Saban, that won championship after championship with Bear Bryant, if you are good enough to go there from when you are in high school, then you have already athletically achieved more than most. Because that university has said, we have a tradition here of championships, and we think that you are good enough to keep that tradition of championships alive. Now, why in the absolute hell would anybody pass up on that? And let's not forget that Nick Saban benched Jalen Milroe and told the press, well, I like my guys to play a little paranoid. I like my guys to play with a little bit of fear. Well, you don't get to have that situation anymore, do you? He didn't learn his lesson when Jalen Hurts said, I'm not doing this. I'm going to OU. I'm not going to play this game with you. Nothing against Tua, but I'm not playing this game. So he took off. You would have thought that he would have learned his lesson then. But now the way that it is, it's, I'm gone, bro. The minute something like that gets said, you don't think that that wasn't a bad look for Nick Saban? You don't think that players around the country looked at that and said, ooh, really? Of course, it's not the same for Nick Saban. I don't want to hear about the educational process. It doesn't mean anything to any of these coaches, and none of them would be recruiting these kids if they weren't athletically gifted. Because they're athletically gifted, that is the only transaction that they need. It has always been transactional from high school to collegiate. Even in high schools, it's transactional. These prep schools, these independent schools, these private schools, they recruit. They recruit. It's transactional. And now the kids have cabbaged onto it. They've said enough is enough. I want my due. And understand that the NFL had better make some adjustments. The UFL better make some adjustments. The NBA better make some adjustments. Because as I said years ago, once this happens, not only are we going to see kids staying longer in school, but we are going to see less and less of them going pro because and the ones that do go pro may not be the creme de la creme. Look, Caleb Williams reportedly just made $10 million playing college football. There are a lot of people out there that would make $10 million playing college football and go, I really don't need the NFL. I've made my investments. I don't have to be here. So you're going to have to do something that's really amazing to convince me to be here. Do you understand that? Do you know what $10 million does? It's still a lot of money in our society. 100K is not, 200K is probably not, maybe even 300K, but 10 million is still a hell of a lot of money. And it still talks. That's all I'm saying. Mike Williams released from the LA Chargers. Look, I think it's pretty much common knowledge right now that they were over the cap huge. I think $25 million. They needed to cut somebody. So Mike Williams, you owed him $20 million this year. Injury prone. I mean, hasn't played a full season in how long? In fact, in 7 years, he's only played one full season. I think he's missed, half the games the last 2 years, to be specific. 18 games, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, you just, what do you do at that point? He's a hell of a player. When he's healthy, there's not a lot out there that's better than Mike Williams. But hazards of the reality in that is he's injured. Now, somebody's going to take a risk on him. Somebody's going to be willing to take him on. Because, risk reward, you got to do what you got to do. So we'll see what happens with that. But, I mean, come on, didn't Tennessee just pick up Calvin Ridley? So maybe they get a Mike Williams. I don't know. But we're going to be talking about Tennessee a little bit later on. But you had to cut it. You're back out of the red now in terms of the NFL. And they had to be there as of yesterday. So what were you going to do? The official NFL season has started. Just not a lot of choice. You compare it to Justin Herbert, who at one point played, 62 straight games, and that's per Bleacher Report. And by the way, he's owed $36.8 million this year. But you're not going to get rid of Justin Herbert, though, are you? That's not going to happen. But I'll be honest with you, I think he's got 1 year, maybe under Jim Harbaugh. 1 year to start winning. Because Herbert hasn't won anything, and he's been playing hurt in just about every game that he's played in. Okay? He's tough. There's no doubts about that. But in terms of finishing a lot of games, he may have started a lot of games, but he hasn't finished a lot of games. And even the games he has finished, whether it's been with lacerations or a hurt ankle or whatever, he's one tough SOB, but at some point you got to stay healthy and you have to get the job done and win. You still got Keenan Allen over there, right? So you've got to make some choices. They're probably, as the word is that they're going to restructure the contract with Khalil Mack, try and open up some cap space. Obviously, he likes what's going on with the LA Chargers. Not that he's been his exact best over there, but obviously he likes what's going on. So what are you going to do? And I think Jim Harbaugh is probably coming in and going, with the team that you guys had, the minimal success that you've had. I mean, everybody's on a limited time frame here. We've got to open up some money. It kind of blows your mind when you start hearing these things and realizing these things. Like, why did he even bother to take this job? What did he like about the LA Chargers? Did he just want to go to the NFL? Did he feel the ship was going to sink in Michigan and decided to take off, and he had an open job offer in the NFL and said, well, to hell with it. Might as well go and continue to coach and make money and not worry about suspensions or anything else. Let's not forget that there were rumors circulating that Jim Harbaugh wanted language in there that suggested that if anything happened, he wouldn't be suspended, he wouldn't be fired, that he'd be able to keep his job and keep coaching at Michigan. Now, the athletic director said that he was going to do whatever it took to keep Harbaugh in Michigan. Well, he's gone now. I don't think that it's a bad hire with Sharon. What I'm saying is how things were said and how things turned out and rumors and everything else that's out there are all a little bit dicey. It's not exactly conjecting. You know what I mean? There's no continuity in it. Austin Eckler, he's gone. He went to Washington. So unless you're thinking about drafting a running back, which obviously high draft pick, maybe you get a chance to go after Blake Corum, one of Harbaugh's guys out of Michigan, unless you want to go running back by committee with Spiller, Kelly, and Dotson. But I don't think you're going to do that. You need offensive linemen. Justin Herbert's got no time to throw back there. I'm sure everybody saw the play this season where he did it before Lamar did, where the ball was tipped and he ran and he caught it. Of course, that drive ended up being all for naught, but right now the LA Chargers are not exactly the best look. Now, I myself have said that there's still a good possibility that they could make the playoffs, and that the AFC West could be one of the tougher divisions in all of football. Why is that? Well, because John Harbaugh did a lot more with a lot less when he was in Frisco. Let's not forget that when he showed up, there was no preseason, there was no anything, because of the pickets and all that stuff was going on with the players and everything. So there was no training camp. There was no preseason. Got that team to the NFC Championship game. The next year they played in the Super Bowl. They were getting blown out until the lights went out in Vegas. But the point of the matter is he was there. He turned around Stanford. He turned around Michigan. Took him a while at Michigan, but he got the job done. So it's about believing in Harbaugh being able to get it done regardless, just being a hell of a football coach. You got Antonio Pierce over there with the Raiders. They've made some impressive moves. You've got Max Crosby on defensive end. Now you got Wilkins on the interior. You probably need to go after a linebacker to help out with some of the run game, but overall, you're not looking bad. You got the Kansas City Chiefs until somebody dethrones them. They are the team, and not just the AFC West, but the NFL. The Denver Broncos completely the bed. We'll get into them maybe a little bit later on with Dallas, but the point of what I'm saying is those are going to be the obvious three teams. But here's the thing, though. Every year, do we not say, well, the Chargers look good because they got Justin Herbert back there? Well, after a while, you got to win some football games. And I think that if you can't do it with Coach Harbaugh, then maybe you can't get it done. It's really kind of 50-50 to me on what LA is going to draft. Are they going to go lineman? Are they going to go running back? Are they going to go wide receiver? Like I said, Calvin Ridley, he's out the picture now. He's Looks like he's going to sign elsewhere. So with everything becoming official today, you got to figure out who you are, what your identity is. All we know is they've got Justin Herbert and Coach Harbaugh. They got Khalil Mack, but, I mean, come on, man. When was the last time you woke up in the morning and, Khalil Mack, you can go by the numbers. Still not what he was in Chicago. Still not what he was with the Raiders. He's good, don't get me wrong. I'd probably take him in Denver, but it makes sense to restructure his contract because you need him. He's a necessity right now, but you can afford to play with his contract, and I think even he knows that. It is just a difficult situation with the LA Chargers, and the more things go along and the more things become known and the more that all these different things begin to take shape, it's kind of like, okay, they're going to have to give Harbaugh some time because in a year they may be going a different direction with the quarterback. And I've already said that last season probably should have been the year for Justin Herbert. But to me, it's got to be this year. New football coach. He's not going to play any games. I think everybody technically is on a one-year hiatus. Other than that, he's going to go to management and go, look, we got to figure something out, and we got to start making some real crazy moves. Getting rid of Mike Williams, or letting him go, I should say, is not the craziest move that you can make. It's not. You could do more devastating things. But even then, I don't know that letting anybody go with the Chargers would be outlandish. They're not winning. You got to do what you got to do. And, of course, we're going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys and the Denver Broncos, which I'm curious, who do you think has done worse in free agency, Dallas or Denver? Denver, to me, did bad in free agency before free agency began. The writing was on the wall with Russell Wilson. Why in the hell was he going to come back? He said all the right things, right? Yes, I want to come back to Denver. Yes, I want to be a part of an organization that wants me. Yes, I love the city. Yes, I love the people, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, if you're Russell Wilson, are you really stepping back into that situation? Let's just keep it real. Half of the fans in Denver don't want him there. Okay, the organization clearly didn't want him there. They felt that restructuring his contract was more important than their potential Hall of Fame quarterback being there. They couldn't get it done, and now look, he's going to get his money regardless. $1 million. The Broncos are going to pay the rest of it. He's still going to get $39 million this year. Denver, to me, has done worse than Dallas in free agency. And they did worse than Dallas in free agency before free agency ever began. Now, I know a lot of people have been running around with the Jerry Jones quote, we're all in, we're all in. What happened to we're all in? Is this what all in looks like to you? Because at one point, the only thing they had done was re-sign a long snapper. But this is case in point when I said the other day on this show that I want to remind everybody that none of what was going on before today was official. Literally nothing. Players can back out. They don't often do it, but they can. Teams can back out. They have never done it, but they can. And Dallas was a perfect example of that. Eric Kendricks. Everybody said early yesterday that he had agreed to a one-year deal with Frisco, and instead he goes to the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, as we know, Kendricks was with Mike Zimmer when he was with the Vikings. So they did something. They did something defensively. Look, it's obvious that Jerry Jones knows what's going to have to happen with CeeDee Lamb. It's obvious that Jerry Jones knows what it's going to take to keep the offensive line around. I think really, look, you can look at this any way you want to. You can say that this is just Jerry being Jerry. Show me where Dallas has had a lack of talent. Ezekiel Elliott put up prime numbers. They had an amazing offensive line for how long? They've got wide receivers over the last 5 to 10 years that can book and go and do just about anything you want them to do. They've done very well in the draft, if you ask me. A lot of people couldn't believe that Jerry passed on Johnny Manziel. He did. Look how that whole thing turned out. I mean, everybody's complaining about Jerry Jones, and even I've complained about Jerry Jones, but I'm looking around and I'm going, he obviously wanted to do something to help out the defense. The name of and wouldn't you? Look what happened with the Green Bay Packers in that playoff game. Jordan Love and them ran all over the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, Dak Prescott was playoff Dak Prescott. What else does he need? Okay, you lose Tony Pollard, who we'll be talking about a little bit later on with the Tennessee Titans. You lose Tony Pollard. Okay, I get that. But you still have a lot of pieces around Dak. Okay, I didn't agree with the way that he handled the Des Bryant situation. I think he did the best he could with Tony Romo and Dak Prescott, and I think everybody just kind of made a choice that they felt was best for themselves and for the Dallas Cowboys. So that is what it is. But when all is said and done, right now, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, can you honestly look at them and go, this is a team that no other quarterback could work with? I mean, people are blaming the team that's around Dak Prescott without even thinking to themselves, wow, this is who Dak turns into whenever the playoffs are here. You've got to get him help. You got to do this. You got to do that. Everybody's going to want their money, man. And Jerry Jones is going to be willing to shell out the dough, but it's going to be picky and choosy, and he's always done this. It's not like they are not talented. They have the parts. Dak cannot survive when the game is at its most crucial. He can't push the football up the field. Anything over 40 yards, 50 yards, forget about it. Especially 50, but really over 40, forget about it. How many times have other wide receivers said we're leaving points on the field? How many times have you watched a Dallas Cowboy game, somebody streaking wide open, and they have to come to a full dead stop because Dak cannot get the football there? It's not that there's any pressure on him. It's not that he's having to throw it off of his back foot. It's not any of those things. It's literally the fact that he just cannot get it there. The one thing that you can say about Dak is during the regular season, he takes care of the football. When it comes time to the playoffs, no. And Dallas Cowboy fan, please do not try to quote numbers and cite numbers from that playoff game. Those were garbage time yards. Green Bay had already pulled everybody. Those stats don't matter. They were just stats at that point. It was Dallas fighting, but more than anything, they were just keeping that game respectable, and Green Bay pretty much allowed them to do it. Did they almost get Houston Oilered? No, they did not. Do I think that Green Bay pulled their guys a little too early? Sure, but at the end of the day, they felt that that game was in hand, and they were correct. They dominated. So, of course, you're going to look at that football game and go, look, if my guy happens to turn it over for whatever reason, whether it's Dak, whether it's CD, whether it's a running back, whether it's a bobbled snap, whatever the case may be, whether it's special teams. Remember they missed the extra point at the regular season finale. I felt like that was ominous going into the playoffs. Whatever it is, if we can't get it done offensively, then I need my defense to be able to step up. And I don't have a problem with this move by Jerry Jones. I really do not. And I think that we are overblowing what he hasn't done. Long snappers and all that stuff, it's all important in the game of football. Special teams is still a crucial part of the NFL. I hate to break it to everybody. I know you want the sexy Derrick Henry pick. I know you want the sexy let's keep Tony Pollard move. I know you want the sexy let's get that big name coming out of the NFL draft. I know you want that. But that's not football. You have to do what you think is best for the football team. We're all in on Dak. What that means is right now we're in on Dak Prescott. Simultaneously, I'm going to need Dak to win a playoff game or two this year. I need him to show me that he belongs as my starter, because I'm telling you right now, I've said this before. I said it about last season, but this season is the straw that's going to break the camel's back. Dak Prescott is going to have to prove that he can get him to the promised land. NFC Championship game, bare minimum. That's what it's going to take to save his position. He can't get past the divisional playoffs again, then it's over. They're moving on. And I would not be surprised if they went after a quarterback in this year's draft to try and light a fire under his ass, because somebody's going to have to. You know, everybody's talking about how everybody got better in the NFC East. You know, the Eagles, they went out and they got C.J. Gardner and got themselves a running back in Saquon Barkley. The Commanders, they went out, they signed Austin Eckler. Everybody's doing all this stuff. What about us? Well, I'll tell you what about us. You're set. And everybody's wanting a big payday, and Jerry Jones is going to have to get real deliberate about who gets it. That's all there is to it. All right, everybody, I'm Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. We got to pay some bills around here. Don't you dare touch that dial. If we got time, we'll get to a recap of the show, but in the meantime, the Tennessee Titans, they get Calvin Ridley, they get Tony Pollard. They did skip pro day, though, for Georgia. I will say that, but simultaneously, right, Brock Bowers, he decided not to participate in pro day for Georgia, so that's who you're going to see. Let's be honest about it. That's who you're looking at. You're trying to get a tight end for Will Levis. Ryan Tannehill's chasing down free agency. He's going to be looking to go somewhere else. Will Levis is your guy. You got Malik back there as well, so you're not great at quarterback, but obviously in the NFL draft, I think you go offensive line. I think that's what's going to happen with Tennessee. You know, Brian Callahan, I think him saying that he wanted to focus a little bit more on free agency, he could say that all he wants to, but the fact of the matter is, if Brock is not going to be doing pro day for Georgia, then why bother? You did lose a lineman already, or you gained a lineman from Denver, which Lloyd Cushenberry, I mean, good luck with that. Denver's offensive line was hot garbage all the last 2 years. Really, that Denver offensive line has been bad since about 2016. They've never been able to get it fixed. That's the way that it is. Horrible. Trevor Siemian didn't have time to throw back there. Paxton Lynch didn't have time to throw back there. Russell Wilson didn't have time to throw back there. Nobody has been successful with the Denver Broncos, and they're not going to be successful with the Denver Broncos until they figure out that O-line, because they're horrendous. They're really bad. Got Ryan Tannehill, like I said, he's free agency. He's probably gone. So, I mean, because, look, you're going to probably stick with Will Levis, right? You're coming off of an injury. I'm still miffed like Cam Newton is as to how in the hell Kirk Cousins finagled the deal, but it is what it is. Ryan Tannehill's not going to get that kind of money. He's going to get somebody to sign him, but let's keep it a buck. Unless it's somewhere like Arizona or a place like that right now, he's probably going to end up being a backup wherever he goes. It's pretty clear that Will Levis is your guy, but look, as good as he was, that offensive line is just bad. I mean, there's no way around it. You go back and you watch those Tennessee games, even with Will Levis back there, he's just young, so he's kind of able to take a beating, right? Simultaneously, you can't just willy-nilly allow your guy to get waylaid back there. You've got to do something to fix everything, because you're not improving in the places that you need it improved, okay? I'm not saying getting Calvin Ridley's a bad thing. I'm not saying getting Tony Pollard's a bad thing. It can help with the offensive line protection, because obviously you add the run game, you know, but then again, it's not like you didn't have a run game with Derrick Henry. So what are you going to do? Look, it's not going to matter the running back there. It's not. You're still just trading one thing for the other. You have to fix the real problem, and that's your offensive line. It's all there is to it. Ryan Tannehill is not a bad quarterback. Is he going to be an all-time NFL talent? Is he going to be in the Hall of Fame? No, none of those things are going to happen for Ryan Tannehill. But I think he was a quarterback that was good enough that if you handled things correctly, probably could have got you the AFC title game, maybe a Super Bowl. He didn't really do bad things in Miami, and he didn't exactly have the best situation out there either. You know, sometimes he plays wild man football. I'll say that. But, you know, you've had some talent around him. You just couldn't fix the line. Whether it was a coaching error, whatever the case may be, you couldn't fix it. And when you're in the playoffs and the Bengals and the Titans are playing each other, and you have the two most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL that season going head-to-head, and people wonder why that game is so damn low scoring, there's no dropping back. And teams are just going to pin their ears back and just go to work once they figure out you're soft. So to me, that's the main thing. Okay, fine. You got a running back. Not that you really needed one, but for whatever reason, you didn't want to come to terms with Derrick Henry, so maybe they know something everybody else doesn't. Fine. You get Tony Pollard. You skip the pro day. Maybe you get Brock Bowers. Maybe you don't at tight end, but I think you need to focus on your line. I really do. Cushenberry doesn't give you anything of significance from Denver. I'm going to tell you that right now. All right, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show is fired up, and we are live on WBFR Block 50 Radio. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio, and I am wherever you're listening to podcasts. Take a device and play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, wherever you're listening. I am there. Block 50 is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It's all Block 50 Radio. Guys, if you can't find Block 50 Radio, I'm telling you right now that you are not looking. Obviously, tomorrow, Austin Ford's going to be joining us on the program. We were hoping to get him on Monday. Couldn't quite nab him, but that's all right. Obviously, we'll be on to talk all things combat sports tomorrow with Austin Ford in hour number 1. And, of course, hour number 2, it continues to go on. Tournament play, seedings, Selection Sunday is coming up very, very soon. In the meantime, your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that dial.